And we are back. ASMR Diesel has returned, guys. I'm your co-host, C Diesel. To the right of me, I have Professor Keegan Comics Ethan Murphy. To the left of me, I have Lelouch V, aka the Stink Meter. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is the POIs, our point of interest videos, in which we discuss different story factors and narratives and things of that nature. Today we'll be covering the old great legendary plot armor. Something that I feel like it's a term that gets thrown around a lot in different groups. I'm not sure how many people actually have the understanding of what it actually is, but we're going to get into that today. Again, we're going to turn to our residential writer, savant, and this natural legend when it comes to the field of writing, Mr. Professor E. Would you please do our fans a favor and explain exactly in your words what you believe plot armor to be?
Sure. And this is something that I know y'all know very well too, but I'll give my quick summation of it. Plot armor is basically where a character or characters in any other circumstance would meet their demise, but because the writer needs them to survive, they will fabricate an unorthodox or extreme scenario in order for them to survive miraculously.
So that being said, obviously I'm going to get to the question that I've kind of tried to make a consistent thing now, as far as, do you see plot armor being a unanimously negative thing in the art of story writing? And I'll direct that question at Ethan quickly. Oh, and then we'll move it over to Otis.
So as I'm sure Otis will alleviate, or not alleviate, I'm old, but we'll highlight anything with nuance can definitely work, of course. So there's no unanimous or ubiquitous negative in writing or storytelling, I don't believe. However, the problem or the pitfall you will run into with plot armor is if the writer is clearly lazy. They clearly back themselves into a corner and they have to do what they call a quote unquote ass pull to get them out of it. And especially it's even worse if the characters continue to survive outlandish circumstances with no repercussions. Like that's a mess.
So Otis, that being said, can you give me any kind of scenario or example you have on when plot armor is used in a positive light?
I mean, more often than not, almost every story has some level of plot armor, right? There's going to be some type of scenario that your hero is put in, or that they should not be able to handle, but by certain circumstances they are be able to do that. So I mean, that goes all the way from the Karate Kid to Wednesday Addams, right? Like their plot armor exists everywhere. Well, when it's inherently good, I'm trying to think of a good scenario.
You mentioned one right there, though. You said Karate Kid. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest. We all love Ralph Macchio, aka Daniel LaRusso. But for that little scrawny kid, after like 3 or 4 months of training, to take down an all Cobra Kai and win that tournament, come on now. That's plot armor. He should have lost.
In a scenario like that, when it comes to athletics, I don't necessarily see that always being plot armor. Me being a huge NBA fan, I've heard copious stories of there being all NBA legends where they started playing the actual sport of basketball at like their mid-teens, and then they became one of the greatest to ever do it. And Ethan, you may not know that, but for most NBA players, it's extremely late in their cycle of being a basketball player.
Normally, I know that. Yeah.
Normally, people start developing those skills at like a really young age or getting some kind of training. Big examples of that being somebody like Hakeem Olajuwon, DeMarcus Cousins. Like he didn't start playing basketball until he was in 7th grade, and he was one of the probably. So there's a lot of people unanimously, but one of the top 3 big men in the NBA for a long stint of time. So when it comes to stuff like the Karate Kid, I don't necessarily see that being plot armor per se, because I see that as being something highly realistic that could possibly happen, because you see a lot of instances about.
Have you seen Karate Kid yet, Charlie?
Yeah, I've seen the original. I've seen the first one.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything past that first one.
That's
so I mean, like, all right, let's compare it to something that you've done a lot, right? When you were in high school, you were a wrestler.
Yes, correct.
Do you think that some random kid with less physical ability than you could somehow come up and be a better wrestler than you after training for only 4 months?
Max
that was literally me. Like, I've told you guys, I had the story of where I literally learned the sport that
your
year.
physique, like you are a bigger
You're not
person,
small.
right? Your physique gives you is an advantage for you. Like,
that is true, but even in that being said, though, like in the sport, I was still average compared to other wrestlers. Compared to the regular person, yeah, I'm huge, but when I'm wrestling people in my weight class the same size as me. That's the whole point of a weight class, is that I'm having people my size, my weight, my strength, and most of those people had more experience than me.
But I guess
you were naturally that size, that strength, that weight. Like you're going against people that you're naturally attuned to fight, right?
Yeah.
In Ralph Macchio's, he's the scrawniest kid that had never been in a fight before in his life.
Right. That's the thing.
Was somehow overcome this person that had been training for years.
Yes.
Like, for this tournament specific.
Yes. Well, before the tournament started, he had never actually thrown a punch in a fight. No experience, no fighting experience at all. And then he managed to win the tournament. That's why it's a bit of plot. I'm not saying it's impossible. Of course, nothing's impossible. And by the way, I think right kid.
It's impossible.
I mean, it's very, very slim, very, very slim possibility of it. But it's just the idea. It's unlikely. And typically, So it's typically when they have it. Like we've all seen Supernatural, the TV show Supernatural. They use a lot of plot armor for Sam and Dean. Like those guys die. I have no idea how many times they've died, gone to hell. Both. It's insane. But the idea is the reason we'll accept it is because they still do actually die. They actually do go to the afterlife in some capacity. However, they have a reason to bring them back, or it's baked into the plot lines for them to come back in some capacity, or there's a reason for it. So we'll give it to them. If they were bending over backwards to keep them alive, just kind of pull them back out of the afterlife with no reason, it's like it wouldn't work. So you can definitely have people survive unsurvivable circumstances or do ass pulls of some kind, I guess, and the audience will still go with it. You just have to know what you're doing.
Okay, fair enough. I guess we've gotten into the positive, obviously, of plot armor in a positive scenario. We can kind of get into the easy, low-hanging fruit of the negative parts of plot armor, as far as, again, a lot of characters having the BS button, that I like to call it. I guess, again, my biggest example of that would be somebody like Sasuke from Naruto. I think we've gotten in anime a lot at this point when it comes to the POIs. For me, that character in particular has a lot of those random power-ups that just happen to literally fall into his lap, or he'll literally have somebody that happens to be at the right place at the right time in the right moment to literally save his life when he literally should have died. So even on his team, when it came to Taka, he had a healer where all it took was you to bite her and you would fully heal yourself. He just is overloaded with plot armor. But that being the case, a lot of people adore that show. Granted, you can argue people's quality and taste or whatever else, I guess, and that being subjective, but objectively, that show is very popular. That character is very popular. Why do you guys think that with scenarios like that, where shows can have an absorbent amount of plot armor but still be consumed by the masses and be enjoyed by a lot of people? Do you think it's a thing that, what is your assessment on that? I guess we can throw it to Mr. Stankmeter herself.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot in there to answer. There's probably less plot armor in Sasuke than you may think, but that's a whole other discussion for another episode. The reason why plot armor necessarily works is because most people don't pay attention to plot. They're usually watching solely for the entertainment factor, what they enjoy, what they wanted to see. So like trying to even find a plot hole isn't necessarily something that the average viewer will attempt. And honestly, it doesn't necessarily matter too much at the end of the day, as long as the person enjoyed it. But I mean, it really just depends on it's so many variables that go into that, right? So I mean, of course, the popularity of Naruto is going to let the audience forgive a whole lot of things, right? Like, I mean, the audience, is trained to accept whatever ass pull comes out because, you know, that is the secret jutsu that they've been hiding for all the time. And you're supposed to have that secret ace in the hole because you're a ninja. Yeah, the bottom line, there's a set up reason for it within the genre of the show because of how you're supposed to be. But I mean, there are other situations where it just doesn't work, and it's even lazier than that. Like, I mean, the power of friendship is a thing that exists as a common thing across multiple different anime. You saw that in everything from Yu-Gi-Oh to Fairy Tail to Gurren Lagann. Like, the power of friendship is in itself been an overused trope that is like the essence of plot armor at its finest, because I can now overcome this thing because you hurt my friend, or I have to save my friend. Like, I mean, one show that we all have talked the praises for, Yu Yu Hakusho. They do that with you know, in the Black Turn arc where when Kuwabara fake dies versus Toguro. I mean, that's a common one, and that's one that people kind of they'll either accept or they'll gripe about it for a second. It's like, oh, again, and then they'll forget about it a couple seconds later. So I mean, again, there's so many instances of all of these things, and some of them are smaller, some of them are bigger. I really feel like I'm talking in circles, so I'm going to pass it.
No, you're good. To get on to the thing of the power of friendship for a brief moment, I think I'm starting to see a reoccurring thing here where that in particular, when it comes to regards to the power of friendship, it's a thing that you see in reality to an extent where, again, there's the cliche that everybody talks about where like a mother is pumped with adrenaline to save her dying daughter or daughter in danger, whatever it is. You get that strength to do something absurd. Or even a lot of people, when you talk about athletes in particular, when you have home court advantage, that being a real thing in which you're energized and invigorated to do things that you normally wouldn't be able to do without that support and cheering of your quote unquote friends. The thing that I'm seeing as a reoccurrence within that in particular, when it comes to the friendship thing, is that, or even just in the thing of plot armor in general, is that it's taking something that in reality and pretty much blowing that thing up and making and multiplying it times 15. And I think that's where the unrealistic nature of it comes from, because it's based in reality, but it's just hyper boosted reality. Would you agree with that, Ethan?
Yeah, absolutely. And this to just piggyback off what both of you are saying, because I agree with what you're all saying. Otis was mentioning how basically the audience will go along with it if they like the characters more or less. And I think that's why Sosuke gets away with so many things, because like the audience is like, yeah, we like Sosuke, so we want him to survive. So whatever it takes to make him survive, good, do it. Same as Sam and Dean in Supernatural. And again, it's a suspension of disbelief. You're talking about a world, these fantasy worlds that are hyper realized. Yeah, all kinds of things happen in these worlds that shouldn't happen in our world. So we're expecting we're going to give them some slack, cut them some slack on some of these things. The problem will happen where it's within the rules of the world you've established, you have a character pull off something that they shouldn't be able to do. That's when it gets a little much. That's when people will kind of like, wait a minute, that seems like a bit, that it stands out as being a bridge too far, so to speak.
Yeah, like trying to go Neji in the tuning exams.
Who?
Naruto versus Neji in the tuning exams.
Oh yeah.
There's no scenario where Naruto wins that because he literally has all of his chakra points cut off, but somehow uses chakra to win.
See, yeah, I mean, plot holes and plot armor do go hand in hand too.
Yeah.
So.
With that one, wasn't that a case of like, didn't the Nine Tails help him out in that instance? I can't remember.
But how could that have worked if the Nine Tails also uses those same chakra points to navigate the chakra?
We've seen some wild shit come from the Nine Tails popping up. I think with that in particular is like they literally implant plot armor inside of an overwhelming amount of plot armor inside of Naruto as like, again, a BS button. So where he's backed into a corner, like him, or we see a lot of different shonen where they have demons inside of them or have some latent ability or power in which they're pressed into a corner and that awakens, and then they can just get out of that situation. Mm-hmm. And it's something that, again, like what Otis said earlier, where people kind of accept it because it was kind of planted there from the beginning, and you were told that either you were told or you were shown examples of they have this thing that's inside of them. So when some bullshit happens, don't be surprised because we told you it was going to happen.
Well, if you do that, if you do kind of plant that in some capacity earlier, yeah, it's okay for it to pay off later on, or for it to, the audience will go along with it that much eagerly if you do somewhat plant it earlier. However, the problem that oftentimes happens with, especially with manga or anime, they'll do like a retcon in some capacity. Where they did it recently with My Hero Academia, the anime, the show. They showed, spoiler alert, they and we all know Deku has like 9 powers or abilities or whatnot, but they have it where he starts using one of his powers in the show before they set up what the power is, or he could do it. And then later on they show, oh, by the way, I'm not sure how many weeks ago or months. Yeah, the float for, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So, oh, by the way, he was actually practicing this, I don't know, a few weeks
ago. The whole time.
He's practicing it. So it's okay, guys. It's fine. So that kind of stuff happens. And it doesn't necessarily take away from the show entirely or make you just hate it. It's plot armor is everywhere. One of the most popular series of all time is, of course, Harry Potter. I would argue Harry Potter had severe plot armor at the very beginning of the series when Voldemort hits him and he doesn't die. It's like, wait a minute, what? So he's a baby.
Talking about what instance are you talking?
He's a baby. Yeah, he's a baby.
Yeah, I think that one. That one they have some random shit of. I think they talked about it like later in the series.
His mother's love protected.
Yeah, in the first movie they said it was his mother's love, and then I think later on they said that it was she used some kind of curse or strong spell to put her soul or part. Like they didn't make him a horror. I don't remember how they explained that. Like,
yeah, it was a Horcrux.
It was a Horcrux pretty much, where they put the soul in. Yeah.
But also that's dealing with retconning essentially. If several books later, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing to retcon either. Yeah. But if essentially you have in all ordinary circumstances, that baby should have died if this master of wizardry hits him. A baby hits him with a blast, point blank range, and he doesn't.
Because just imagine you use any other spell, right? Like it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna flood this room and drown everybody. He would have just died right there.
Somebody give me a dagger so I may properly stab this baby.
Yeah.
Anything, right? But,
yeah. Hey. And I'm not here to knock Harry Potter, but and I'm not even knocking plot armor necessarily. It's just the idea that when it's done lazily, when you can tell essentially that the writer kind of is doing an ass pull or didn't properly plan their story, that's when it hurts the most.
So for that example in particular, how do you know that in particular? Because with that one in particular, when it comes to Harry Potter, she laid mention of the love being the thing that saved them, and then she took that and then kind of twisted that into the curse later on. If you're laying down, if you're pretty much just manipulating something you've already said, would you still consider that an ass pull, even though you laid it out to some extent earlier?
It can be. You could also argue like, well, why wasn't Harry's mother able to survive? Why wouldn't she use the same spell, use the same methods to keep herself alive?
The whole thing with that one was
she had to die for it to activate.
For a Horcrux, you have to have something has to die to create a Horcrux.
Right, but what I mean is, if the idea was that there are ways you can, in any scenario, pretty much in any scenario, you can say, well, you could do this instead. You could change this around. And the main thrust of the story, of course, is for Harry to be the one that lived, the one who lives, what have you. I get that. It's just unlikely that a master. Let's break it down in basic, simple terms. If you were a master assassin killing wizard, would you let a baby survive? Like that wouldn't go down. You'd find a way. What? No. What? You'd kill that thing. Horcruxes aside, you'd find a way to kill that thing. So, but if the plot demands that kid survives, if the plot demands it, the writer's gonna find a way to do it. And I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying he had plot armor.
Yeah. I see your point there. Because later on in that show, when you get to like the Order of the Phoenix, where they show just how capable of a wizard Voldemort is in that fight against Dumbledore, I ain't gonna lie, I was like, buddy did all this against Dumbledore and still was not able to kill Harry.
Right.
But he like conjured a whole fire dragon.
He left his wand at home and just used objects around the room to kill Harry, but instead he wanted to do it that way. So
sure.
Yeah.
And not to pull this apart even more, because I think Horcruxes weren't introduced into the canon until a bit later on. Into the fifth
so
book.
that was the thing in which like they had them around. I think that was another case of like she introduced something and then gave it like a dual value earlier, because they introduced the Philosopher's Stone, they introduced the book from the Chamber of Secrets, and then I think in the 6th movie, or I can't remember what book it was, in the Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone.
Fifth movie.
What they said? Order of Phoenix, when they explicitly said the word Horcrux and introduced the concept of a Horcrux.
Yes, the 5th movie.
Like they introduced all these objects beforehand in previous movies and books, but in that one in particular is when they introduced the concept of a Horcrux and was like, oh yeah, all these things you destroyed, they were that strong because they were Horcruxes.
No, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I guess what it would have been is if she had the Horcrux mentioned or shown in its entirety in some capacity in the first book or the first movie pertaining directly to how he survived. And I'm not knocking the writer for the retconning or even.
No, you can. If you rock it, knock it. It is what it is.
But it's just and again, when people love Harry, people love the world. So people are going back to Otis. What was said, we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt and let that happen. We want it to. We want this character to have their ride. We're going to give Naruto the chance to win against Neji in a fight because we want Naruto to win. So these things are going to happen. It is what it is. I get it.
Right. Well, yeah, we kind of beaten plot armor into the ground at this point. We're a little bit over time, but yeah.
Well, let me ask y'all a question real quick, though. It's a very specific question, but I know both of y'all have an answer to it. In the world of Batman, Batman directly survives an Omega beam from Darkseid. Would you? He gets sent back through time and everything else, but would you consider that a plot armor or bad use of plot armor? Or what would you?
Batman is the king of plot armor. Like he has plot armor to the nth caliber.
So that one in particular, I'm not as mad about because that weird thing of him getting thrown back in time gave Lou to a really dope line of books as far as him traveling throughout history. And it was dope. I think if it led to some bad content, it probably wouldn't have been received the same way.
But what do you attest his survival to? I can't remember. No one else survives.
There's an explanation as to why it was in particular. I can't remember what I have to go back and try to find.
It's plot armor.
I haven't read it in a while. There was something about somebody intervening. I don't know if it was like Morpheus or Metron. Yeah. Somebody intervened because they didn't want Batman to die or something like that.
Yeah.
Which at that point I'm like, why not just have him dodge the Omega Beam again? Which that's another thing that was kind of weird to me.
He's dodged it before.
How he dodged it before. Literally, the way that Batman usually dodges the Omega Beam is that he just throws something else into the path to destroy it. Why has nobody else tried that before?
Yeah. Also, keep in mind, Superman can move at the speed of not speed of light, but he can move incredibly fast. It's about he still can't dodge these beams. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, he has human reflexes, and his thing was, I'm gonna just throw this thing in the path of it, easy as pie, but nobody else is thought of it. Yeah. Maybe you can attribute that to his tacticianship. I don't know. I don't know.
So if it was like a D&D card or something, you see his stats for tacticianship is like maxed out.
But you don't think anyone thought to try to hide behind something?
That's what
did the same thing, right?
Yeah. Or anybody with a shield, does a
shield not count? Right.
That's the whole thing. But again, with a dude that literally fights gods on a consistent basis and holds his own and even beats them on most occasions.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think that's part of the love for the character is that people kind of relate to him more. 100%. Is because you want to most people want to feel like they're able to take on things bigger than them in not just physical stature, but in just even through concept wise, just bigger events, whatever else. But I won't ramble all day about it. But thank you guys for tuning in. My nose is starting to run. I'm trying to close this shit up.
That's a sign that needs to go to your nose starts to run.
Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been another episode of the Then and Now podcast. This has been another point of interest video for people that may not know what a POI is and what it stands for. These are fun. We enjoy these. And if you guys have any thoughts on another plot topic or device that you want us to cover next, let us know in the comments below. Again, if you want any more content like this, we have previous POIs out from covering things like the third part of a trilogy to flat art characters to just good character arcs in general. They're there if you want to go take a look at them. We thank you guys for your support. We hope for your continued support, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
You mentioned the Prince of Plot Armor Ichigo, where we're literally about to go into an arc to explain why